Hey, wanted to share a couple things that have come out of experiment that's in process slash was run yesterday by myself and some partners, and correlate a conversation with another partner, Chimay Patel, who I work with on BlockX Labs and Lasso Finance and other projects, all around scalability. Is the big macro from a decentralized ecosystem perspective. Our kind of consistent scalability challenges and how we're going to resolve that, because that has got to be a core element of what this positive run up in the ecosystem is creating. So as capital comes in and the token values appreciate, using that capital to work on and focus on delivering real world utility, real world application value to really retain, ingrain, and integrate the power of decentralized applications and decentralized networks into the day-to-day business of being humans. In the technology choices that are like in flight as we speak, Ethereum 2 upgrades, optimistic roll up, sharding, plasma, all the different Ethereum staking options, not staking options, pardon me, like scaling options of like how do we scale this thing out, are totally in flight, totally uncertain. What's cool about that is they've taken the approach that the successful technologists of the millennial, that kind of 1980s generation, early 90s generation technologists have taken, is code wins arguments. They're kind of that Facebook approach of we don't need to have a committee meeting about this. Go ship product and see what works. And that's a huge element of what's going on in the developer community in the decentralized worlds. It's don't tell me about it, show me about it. And there's a level of communication and all that kind of stuff goes into that, but it's shipped code. And that technology uncertainty that creates of, there's 4 or 5 choices you can make a bet on to go start building kind of that more business infrastructure of like what kind of thing do I build around? If I'm not building core protocol stuff, what do I build on top of it? What kind of infrastructure do I want to build into Ethereum that's going to create a sustainable business? It's wickedly challenging because what's happening underneath you can totally change. So the platform risk is very real. Can be mitigated, but it's very real. So I use the experiment that business that I'm an investor and very active, invested my time more, quite heavily into, is we've done a real world business to business loan. We're representing that business loan as an NFT in order to show that transaction, represent that transaction in the decentralized finance world that we're executing in the real world. Going through the process of originating the loan, funding the loan, creating the NFT that represents the loan asset, and then we'll retire that loan, we'll pay it off. That whole process, essentially is the underlying protocol that depends on is Ethereum. So we've run through that transaction. There's all kinds of fun user experience stuff that's still not ideal, and couldn't imagine a bank doing suffering what we did from a risk perspective of if you copy and paste the addresses incorrectly, money disappears, who's in control of the keys, and how does that work from an operational risk perspective? Like we're willing to do that as entrepreneurs, and it wasn't that bad, but it's you don't knowing how enterprises work. That's not how it works inside a corporate environment. So that's a UX issue. Those things will get. Those aren't platform dependent. That's just making the business work so you have time and energy to start to front end it in a better way. The core issue there was a $2,000 asset, not a transaction, asset. So like the upside on this, probably it'll generate $100 worth of interest income. So there's $100 of revenue in that transaction. The gas fees were problematic, let's say, from a business case perspective. We have confidence in the technology that we're working with to run that experiment to go, the gas problem won't be a long-term problem, but it's not totally clear, having a few different perspectives on this market, of where's that play out? How do I get the $500 plus notional that was expended on minting a $2,000 business related NFT go down to get it to like the notional pennies that probably should be in notional dollars, single digit dollars that would have been, that would be tolerable. $2,000 transaction. If I do that in the real world, maybe that would have cost me $20. Being generous. So that it costs 20% plus the transaction volume. That is a completely unsustainable model. Network traffic and blah blah blah, and it's super hype cycle. Like the network traffic shouldn't slow down. If Ethereum's doing what she's doing, like network traffic volume, the congestion in therefore the gas fees that need to go at resolving blocks and getting epochs minted, shouldn't stop. And like 1559 will resolve a little bit of pressure on this stuff, and it's being chipped away at. The sharding, optimistic, all the different layer twos are explicitly going after that type of problem, whether they're work or not. And then what bet do you make here now in Q1 of 2021 around how's that going to resolve? Will it resolve? When will it resolve? How do I run my business in the context of the uncertainty, that resolution? And then where do I think that price will go? What kind of faith do I put into taking my notional transaction expense from $500 plus down to $5? When, where, how, why? I'm listening. I'm pretty sure the smartest kids in the room don't necessarily have a very coherent, clear, reliable answer to that question that would induce someone who's not committed to go down the path, which, make no mistakes, there's no bank that's committed to that. I'm here because I'm an entrepreneur and I want to see it happen. So I'm willing to burn capital. I'm not even investing. I'm burning that capital to get insight to share and learn and figure out, have a real opinion of by doing. I'm not skilled to code. I have to try and transact business in this environment in order to contribute value to it. So, gang, we want business to stick around, be sustainable, scalable. The answer's just got to get much more clear. And part of the conversation that made this really intriguing, really interesting is Polkadot's much more mature in the thesis of how to answer this question than is Ethereum. In most other chains, from what I can see and tell and do, the parachain concept, I think, is really intriguing, because if we could isolate the jobs to be done and figure out how to layer those and coordinate those across software agents, which is ostensibly what I think they'll turn out to be. If I have an identity agent, I have an addressing agent, I have a ledger agent, I have a transaction optimization agents, those types of tools getting built is like wickedly interesting. Whether or not the platform that Polkadot has created, and then the abstraction layers that are built on top of that, are the right platform to bet on. It's got some more stability to it right now than Ethereum does. So that makes a really interesting bet to look at. Because it's like atomizing the jobs to be done functionality inside of smart contract logic, network optimization, network routing, data flows across those networks and in between those jobs to be done functions. That's not complicated. We packaged these up into SaaS applications for a reason. Full stack, in order to solve for the coordination challenges. Push a button and magic happens. It's because there's a stack underneath that button. But in order to enable that scalably in a decentralized way, you gotta shard and distribute out all those different data flows, job flows, states of the different job functionalities that are happening inside of a transaction logic, mapping the business logic, the transaction logic, mapping that into which software agents am I going to go use to do that? How does all the protocol reconcile? What's my transaction expenses and overhead timelines? All those things go into the architecture of a product that does the job, because people are proven they will optimize for give me back time and money. Privacy, meh. Counterparty risk, meh. It saves me time and it saves me money. I push a button and it gets it done cheap. Who your counterparty is, what they did to you, could or could not do to you in the future based on how you saved that time and money. It is extremely clear. No one cares. At scale, in any way, shape, or form. Here I am on the internet. So, in a real capitalist, what's the utility I get? How does this serve my self-interest? How do we make a fair exchange of value? I gotta get it done fast and cheap. And if it's secure, immutable, self-sovereign, fair, all the kind of things that I get excited about from a decentralized, but holy smokes, that's the future. But we got it, making these technology bets is really challenging. Because bringing more and more real world transactions into decentralized systems is the path. This is the way. The disintermediating of the bank means I got to be able to do all the things that my bank does for me at a click of a button, seamlessly, despite all the counter risk of my bank can tell me I'm a terrorist anytime it wants, and my defensibility against them deciding that I'm an evil human is like, how much lawyer expense do I have available? Oh, I have none because they locked down my bank account. I'm aware of that. I'm that much concerned about it. I live in Canada. If I was a Venezuelan or a Turkish person, I'd have that much concern. So we got to get into how do we deliver the business value? How do we start giving a more secure platform bet around that? Is help me help the technologists. Technologists help me help the business people, please. That is the only purpose of trying to illuminate this with a kind of a bit of a long and winding story. But there is big bets to be made here in this, I'll say the 2020 to 2025 run that we're into here. We got to start nailing this. In the 16 to 20 run, we nailed the market said we think Bitcoin's really cool. We need to be able to custody it. We need to be able to count it. We need to be able to determine what it is from a legal and regulatory perspective, so our banks can hold it and use it and do it, because we agree this is a good technology and good financial product. Built in, that all got built out to utilize the network, to utilize smart contract capability, to utilize the rails of transactions that we have available to us in theory. Is what we got to do here in this kind of 2020 to 2024 window. Is we got to put the stakes in the ground. I say stake kind of on purpose, to build out the equivalence of the exchanges, custodians, regulatory clarity, all the things that we did around digital assets of like, are these assets, what are these assets, how can I'll just keep using the bank as the persona. How does the bank interact and use these things because we think they're technologically interesting and financially important? We got to do how do I DeFi? They're asking us the question right now. How do I DeFi? What's it? How do I do? What's digital art? How does this work? Why is NFTs important? All those questions they're asking on CNBC. We got to build the stuff that's going to give them the containers to transact in that do it better, faster, and cheaper than the way they currently do it. And just use gas as the boogeyman to think about why it ain't better, faster, and cheaper. We haven't built the product yet. And we got to work on it, and we got to help figure out what platforms on what top, and because this is way more surface area here than how do I custody it, where do I get it, how do I buy it, how do I give you my dollars and get the bitcoins back, and then where do I put the bitcoins? I went through that phase, so I'm not making fun of that because it was not easy, but we gotten over that education hurdle. We built the infrastructure. It's a push of a button. My loonies leave my Canadian bank account. They go into an exchange. They get converted to bitcoins. I take the bitcoins. I put them in my wallet. Just that easy. Wasn't that easy in 2017, 16. It was much more confusing than that. 14 when I bought it on paper. I literally bought it with cash and paper. How do we extend and expand the surface area of what this technology can do and who it can serve? Wickedly fun problem.